Hello, my name is Allison Carmen, and welcome to my podcast, 10 Minutes to Less Suffering. And the name of today's podcast is Resistance Leads to Negativity. And the reason this has been on my mind lately is that I just returned home from my daughter's law school graduation. And the first day, it was beautiful outside, and there was a beautiful class day ceremony. And the second day, it started to rain right before the graduation ceremony began. And the administrators of the law school decided to move the graduation inside. And because that had not happened for over 2 decades, it was very chaotic. And it turns out that the parents were directed to go into the classrooms to watch the graduation on a large screen. And the students were directed to go to an auditorium where the graduation ceremony would happen live. And because there were so many people there, the rooms were packed and there really wasn't enough room for all the parents to sit comfortably. So as I entered the room with my ex-husband and my younger daughter, there was no place to sit. So we found this little area in the corner where we were able to sit on the steps. It wasn't the most comfortable place to sit, but I actually was relieved and happy that I found a place that I'd be able to view the graduation. But as I was sitting there, I heard a lot of parents start to complain. They were upset there was no room. They started to complain that the university should have prepared for it better. They started to complain that it was late. Even my ex-husband was complaining that it should have been on time, and his back hurt and his neck hurt. As you can imagine, I was very happy at that moment that he was my ex-husband, so I didn't have to really pay much attention to that piece. But as I was listening to these people resist, it became really negative. And it reminded me, especially because it was raining, of that wonderful Longfellow quote that I mention a lot. For after all, the best thing one can do when it is raining is to let it rain. It reminded me of when you're in traffic. You're sitting there and there is nowhere to go. There's someone behind you and there's someone in front of you. And you hear people screaming and beeping, and then some people try to get ahead of someone else. But in the end, it is what it is. In the end, it'll move when it moves. In the end, life has made the decision. And all we can do is choose our experience. So as I was sitting there, not resisting the situation, watching the people around me resist, watching my ex-husband resist, as I was sitting there, I felt complete joy because I knew I couldn't control the weather. I couldn't control the university's decision. I couldn't control the space in the room. And all I could do is show up. I found a seat and do my best to enjoy my daughter's graduation. And the fact that she achieved so many wonderful things, the fact that I was so proud of her, the fact that she was so happy, the fact that she had found her way, that was center stage. And I couldn't control anything else, so I sat in joy. And what's so interesting is that the people around me, many of their children were in the same situation, yet they felt uncomfortable. And I understand everyone has a right to react the way they want to react. But it's also interesting that when we feel discomfort, even during a very exciting, wonderful occasion, instead of allowing that discomfort and realizing what's out of our control and what's not, we often choose that negativity. We start to say, this shouldn't be happening, this is wrong. And whether it is or not, it's happening. And so the fact that I was able to choose joy, and many people around me chose to be negative, they chose to resist, they chose to be frustrated and disappointed. Again, that's their choice. But it just goes to show it is a choice and it's a perspective. And sure, sometimes some things are so upsetting, it's really hard to get to that place of non-resistance, of peace. It takes us a while. But often we let these little things or these expectations or how we thought life was going to be, supposed to be, ought to be, take us out of the present and take us out of the joy that is so in front of us. And I'm sure there were a lot of people that were physically uncomfortable. But again, that doesn't mean that we have to resist. I'm sure people had expectations of how the day was supposed to go, but it doesn't mean we need to resist. And the minute we just let that all go, we have the choice to go back to joy, to go back to presence, to go back and see Where are the blessings? What could I be grateful for? And I'm sure there were a lot of people in the room that did maintain their joy. But for some reason, the loudest voices in the room take center stage. And that's what happens within ourselves. The minute we feel that discomfort, the minute we feel our expectations are not met, the minute we feel things are not going as planned, that voice gets very loud and we lose our presence and we lose possibly the center of that day, the center of that moment, or that possibility that exists, that quiet possibility that wants to be heard, that quiet joy that's looking to be recognized. We lose it because of that feeling of discomfort or disappointment. So this is just an example of what happens to us every day. And it's not to judge ourselves. It's not to feel bad about ourselves. It's for us to look at and think about, can we create more awareness every day about what we resist? Can we create the awareness every day of how we try to control what can't be controlled, and have kindness and compassion towards ourselves? Because most of the time we're doing this because we're afraid of the unknown. Most of the time we're doing this because we're afraid of uncertainty. We're afraid we're not okay. We're afraid that if things don't go as planned, how will our children be okay? How will we be okay? How will we flourish? Or if a moment is not exactly as we thought it was going to be, it's less meaningful. Something is stolen from us. But what we forget is that the only thing stolen was our expectations. The only thing stolen was that comfort that we seek in knowing that life will often choose for us. Yes, we can make plans. Yes, we could have intentions. But then life comes along, the moment comes along, and it's going to give us what it decides. Did we play a role in it? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I had no role in the rain or the graduation. And sometimes we have no role in something raining in our day, or a decision that people make, or something not going the way that we thought. And that's the most important moment of our lives. That moment when we feel uncomfortable, that moment when we feel resistance. Because if we go that way and we sink into the misery, the despair, the disappointment, and again, we are allowed to feel whatever we want to feel, but if we do that in that moment, when nothing is in our control, when life has made the decision, we often miss the glory of the moment. We often miss, again, that whisper of a possibility of joy and presence. And we also miss understanding ourselves. And sometimes it might be a meaningless moment where, so we got a little cranky that things didn't go our way. But sometimes it's a really big moment. A decision has to be made, or something you work so hard for is there, but it's not exactly who you thought it to be, so it passes you by, or the joy slips through our fingers, or the potential for love, or the potential for a new opportunity or new possibility. Because for all we know, life is giving us a gift, or life is showing us another way, or it is what it is, and through that acceptance, we allow our disappointment, but we also allow other parts that the moment is giving us. And sometimes, yes, a situation can have joy, can have misery, can be challenging, it can be everything. But when we resist so much, it's just negative. And sometimes we're just shutting down to what's possible. And for me, I thoroughly enjoyed my daughter's graduation. Nothing stole a moment from me. And perhaps the people around me who were complaining, maybe they were just letting it out and they enjoyed it too. I don't know. But I know that if I would have gotten into that space, that negativity would have shut me down on some level. That negativity would have blocked some of my joy. And what's also really interesting is that my daughter came up to me after the graduation and said, Mom, there was something so great about it because everyone that was graduating, we were together and it was very intimate. And so I got to really cheer for my friends and they got to really cheer for me. And I thought that was so interesting that the parents might have not been having the experience they had wanted, but that maybe it was better for the students. We'll never know. But maybe is always there. And when we're negative, we forget the maybe. We forget that uncertainty is our best friend. We forget things change. So I hope you could think about this podcast and think about where you're resisting and where you're uncomfortable and where you have expectations. And when they come up, just take a pause and ask, what can I let go of in this moment? I understand I'm uncomfortable and I understand I didn't want it to be this way, but how can I accept this? And maybe there's still joy, and maybe things are still okay, and maybe it's best this way, or maybe the next moment things will change. And it's best we always make the most of what is in front of us, because for all we know, for ourselves and our children and the world, maybe the best is yet to come. Thank you for listening to this podcast today. If you'd like to get in touch with me, you could email me at allison@allisoncarmen.com. If you'd like to buy my books, The Gift of Maybe or You're Without Men, they're available at all major bookstores and online retailers. And if you'd like to buy my audiobook for The Gift of Maybe, it's available at all major audio platforms. And if you like this podcast, I hope you subscribe and leave a comment.